Hello everyone, you're listening to Denpa, an otaku podcast, which is brought to you by Victor Kandra University, an institution of higher learning truly ahead of its time. For this week's episode of Denpa, our very first episode ever, we wanted to take a look at the latest episode in the latest installment of a franchise loved by many. This week on Denpa, we'll be taking a look at Steins Gate 0, episode 18. I hope you enjoy. Alright, so I guess we're going to talk about Steins Gate because it's topical. And that's hip and trendy and shit.
So at the time this is being recorded, episode 18 just aired like 2 days ago.
Wow, how topical.
We're really selling out here in the first episode.
It might not be the first. We don't actually know what we're doing. Alright, so what are your thoughts?
So immediately my problem with episode 17 and episode 18 is so these are supposedly highly trained CIA operatives, and there's like 10 or 15 of them on the roof.
Okay.
And all of them are completely unable to hit either Suzuha or Mayuri.
It's just Mayuri.
So all of these highly trained elite commandos cannot hit two girls running around on the roof. And when they're shooting, it just looks like absolute garbage. It looks like I'm watching a bunch of like still images of what someone thinks a gunfight should look like.
Okay, but the opposite problem is that if in media the gunfights were too effective, all the characters would fucking die before any plot happens. So like, I agree that the action scenes were a problem because they're just trying to like put in an action scene, right? And they're not doing a good job of it. But if like the stormtrooper effect didn't exist, Han Solo would be dead, maybe in the original Star Wars trilogy in like the first 10 minutes, right?
But my issue here is very immersion breaking, especially when you consider that this is supposed to be metropolitan Tokyo. So when the Apache attack helicopter shows up, like the Russians, and they swoop in and they blow up the time machine,
okay.
The only thing I was wondering was how did no one from like the Japanese government ever realize there's an attack helicopter flying around Tokyo? How did the JSDF allow a helicopter to just fly around the city of Tokyo?
I mean, they probably didn't. The United States has military bases in Japan, right?
No, but this is a Russian craft. It's not the Americans, though.
Where do you even helicopter?
Yeah, where do they even like take this thing off without anyone noticing, right?
I guess in Russia.
Do they just like fly all the way down?
Yeah,
like
they
North
fly
Falkland
like
Islands?
Across Manchuria, down into Japan. I don't fucking know.
But surely the JSDF must have noticed there's a goddamn helicopter encroaching on Japanese airspace.
Okay, well, I didn't really find it as much as a problem because, this entire season has kind of been immersion breaking for me, right? Okay. Because in the first season, the way the series is set up, like, it's grounded, and then the mystery and the drama happens in the second half after you get to know the characters, right? But now we know the characters, so they're resorting to other sorts of things to catch our attention. Like they redesign character designs for some of the characters, right?
Like who?
Like Ferris.
Oh.
Like is a fucking cat now.
Wasn't that always her stick?
Okay, but in the first Steins Gate, you could see a normal person wearing her costume. But now she's literally wearing like a cat hoodie and cat paws.
I think they're just logically playing up that character's gimmick.
Okay, but they've played it up past the point that I'm willing to accept. No one's actually gonna walk around with cat paws and use them to do everyday tasks.
Doesn't she
right?
work in a cosplay cafe?
Yeah, but this is outside of her work hours. She's walking around with like this bright pink hoodie, and I just...
Have you never seen weebs that wear like those cat ear headbands?
Yeah, but this is a level higher than cat ear headbands, okay?
I don't think that's the biggest problem. Especially because I don't think she gets that much screen time in this series anyways.
Well, yeah, she's a minor character.
Actually, what I'm curious about is, the girl that can read Steiner? There's like a lesser version of reading Steiner.
Which girl?
The girl who's friends with Yuki Amane, the one with the short hair, who was in the hospital.
The short hair? Oh, the short hair one?
Yeah, she's the one who
the one that people thought was the motorcycle girl, one of the suspects.
No. Didn't they think Yuki was the?
Okay, they set up multiple suspects, right? Like they had.
There was a whole deal with the hand, right? She got shot in the hand, and then Yuki shows up with her hand bandaged.
Yeah, but there's also that the short-haired girl got sent to the hospital, and I thought that also triggered some flags for some people.
But I'm curious if these characters will have any actual impact on the plot going forward, though. It would seem kind of irrelevant if they just focused a lot of the time on introducing these new characters for this season, and then they just disappear and they don't do anything for the rest of the show.
Well, I think they kind of have to. Because, okay, we already know most of the other characters.
Yes.
And then, Okabe is frankly not a lot of fun to spend a lot of time with.
He's a normie now.
Yeah, first of all, he's a normie, and he's really fucking depressed, right? So,
I think he has a legitimate reason to be really fucking depressed.
Yeah, but it's not... Okay, but everyone wants him to, go full mad scientist again and do some stuff about his situation. Because eventually we know it's going to happen. Instead, we get to watch him being depressed all the time.
I think Okabe as a character has been the primary driving force of my enjoyment for this season. I am not really a fan of how they've developed Mayuri and Okabe's romance specifically for this season. It seems very drawn out.
Hikoboshi stuff?
Yeah, that it goes on for 3 episodes where Mayuri says basically the same thing 5 times about how she wants Hoin Kyoma back and how Okabe isn't the same person as it used to be. And then the end of the episode 18, she goes back to saying that, I just said that I loved Hoin Kyoma more than I loved Rinter Okabe. But now I'm just going to go back and say the exact opposite of what I just said last episode. So, if we compare that to how they did Daru and Yuki's relationship, I think that was handled a lot better. They wrapped it up neatly in one episode in a sort of heartwarming, weeaboo way that otakus would enjoy.
Okay, but that's more of a periphery relationship. Mayushi and Okabe's relationship is central to the plot of the series. It's one of the...
But it's been more or less canon since season 1.
More or less canon?
There are hints in the first season about Mayuri's romantic feelings toward Okabe.
Well, she's one of the roots in the visual novel, right?
Yes, but I've never read it.
Well, neither have I.
Okay, so from a character development perspective, I'm happy that Mayuri is taking more agency in the plot, that she is actually trying to do things and become involved.
She was driving the plot, but it was not by her own will.
Yeah,
she was just dying.
I think in the first season, Mayuri just acts as an impetus to get Okabe to do things.
Yeah,
she
not
herself
really
doesn't really do anything.
Well, she's not really aware of what's going on either, right?
Right. She just dies.
Yeah, she just dies over and over again. And Okabe's like, shit, I don't want her to die. That's bad.
Right, but if we compare the Mayuri and Okabe relationship in this season to how they handled Kurisu and Okabe in the first season, I think Kurisu and Okabe was handled better. It seemed like a more natural progression instead of this one where Okabe just happens to see Mayuri sitting on a bench in a park and they have like some deep conversation.
Oh yeah, that was weird. They just kind of needed to shoehorn the characters together, I think, for the stuff to work. So they just put them in a park together. But it didn't really work.
I know I've been very critical of this season of Steins Gate Zero, but I think overall I have enjoyed it, just not as much as I remember enjoying the original series, though. From a plot perspective, I think it's pretty interesting, though.
A pop perspective?
A plot
perspective.
Yes.
Even with, like, the holes in, like...
I don't think it's that bad.
Well, but I think that they definitely... Okay, so I feel like... Actually, I know for a fact that production for Steins Gate Zero, even the visual novel, was a bit troubled, right? Because they were planning on releasing a sequel light novel series where they, like, continued the story, but that never happened because they couldn't figure out how to do it. Right?
I mean, the whole concept is that the Steins Gate timeline averts World War III.
Yeah, but, okay, they were trying to create some other conflict with some other nefarious organization, but I'm pretty sure they couldn't figure out a way to do it without, like, copying the plot of the original or becoming more cliched, right? So they just never did it. It was never released. And they were like, okay, where can we get more Steins Gate, right? Where can we do more Steins Gate? And they ended up doing it in the timeline, like, between episode 24 and 25 and all
I think that was a good move, though. I think that gives them more content to work with.
It was a good move, but at the same time, like, they wrote this part of the story that takes place in the middle of the story after the rest of the story's written, so there are going to be plot holes, right?
What would be an example of one of these plot holes?
Well, I don't really notice plot holes because I've watched so much anime at 2x speed that I accept pretty much anything that happens in an anime anymore. But I feel like I don't think they've handled, like, Maho that well.
I think all of the Victor Chandra characters haven't been handled the best.
Well, I feel, okay, so, like, Professor whatever his name, Les Kanan, I don't know. The Japanese are trying to pronounce it, so there's probably a way to actually pronounce it, but nobody knows how to pronounce it.
I mean, it's very obvious from the beginning that he is the primary antagonist.
Well, they spoiled it in the opening, too, right? Because they had, like, the face of an old, menacing professor in the glass, and then in a scene they had, like, Mr. Lolly Maid enthusiasts look in a mirror, and it was the same shot, right, with very similar facial features. So I'm sure I don't know why they would spoil it in the opening like that, though. Why wouldn't they leave it to the plot? Is it to, like, reward the viewers for watching the opening?
Whatever happened to the other professor? Like the woman.
The woman?
I
forgot she existed.
Yeah, I think she's dead. Because there's that in the end of episode 17, you see, like, the corpse of the masked, hooded operative of the hell.
Okay.
And I think it's suspected that is the female professor.
Okay. Because
there's that whole shtick with the wounded hand. Like, after she gets shot, when they have the confrontation over Kurisu's laptop, and then she shows up also having her hand bandaged or some crap like that.
Oh, they bandaged a lot of people's hands to keep people guessing.
I assume it's the female professor, though. It's probably not Yuki.
No, I don't think it's
Yuki. It's definitely not Yuki. So it must be the female professor. And presumably she's dead now. Is she in cohorts with Shaman Girl Man and the CIA?
I don't know.
I think something that was interesting that came out of episode 18 was, so the Lineshkin of the future sends Kaguri back into the past to tell the Lineshkin of the past about what happens in the future. So I think there's a interesting paradox, I guess, where if this event doesn't happen, whether or not Lineshkin ends up turning into a mad scientist,
a true mad scientist
or not, because at least from the impression that I got in episode 18, he looks like a pretty normal university professor until Kagura shows up and he goes batshit insane.
Well, okay, so I looked at the same event, and I saw parallels actually with how they handled getting to Steins Gate, right? Because he was trying to steal the time machine while making the time machine look like it was destroyed, because he knows history will play out in a way such that the time machine is destroyed here, right?
Yes.
So he's trying to, like, kind of deceive the world by making the time machine seem like it was destroyed and then taking the time machine so that the timeline isn't affected, but at the same time it is affected, which is kind of similar to how they did Steins Gate with faking Kurisu's death, right? So I was wondering if eventually Okabe would look at, like, the messed up plot of Mr. Closet Weeb Professor and figure out how to do Steins Gate from that. I think that's plausible.
Well, it's been a while since I've watched the original series, but is it Okabe who sends him the D-mail on how to achieve Steins Gate?
he gets a D video from himself in the future, right?
Okay. So the Okabe who thinks he fails is the one in the future who goes back to tell the Okabe from the beta world line how to get...
Yeah, so that's another paradox loop in that... So Okabe has to live a life in which he didn't try to go back and save Kurisu and do that entire chain of events before coming to the realization and how to get to Steins Gate, and then send the D-mail back to the past Okabe.
Presumably this season ends with them reaching Steins Gate.
I don't know if they're going to end with reaching Steins Gate. Maybe it'll just end with Okabe doing, like, the D-mail scene, and then they'll make it sentimental through context.
But there's a D video from Daru in episode 17 about Operation Arclight, where he, like, specifically refers to it as a alternative way to get to Steins Gate.
Is it really, though?
I mean, it seems...
How would he know? Because he doesn't have Reading Steiner, right? Like,
he makes this time machine. He probably knows something.
Okay, but when they made the time leap device, they didn't really know anything. They just kind of put, like, the microwave together in such a way that it worked with the television downstairs, and it did the stuff.
I guess.
Or that was at least for the D-mails. Then Kurisu came in and was like, I actually know what I'm doing. I'm going to put the lifter inside the time machine so we don't have to turn on the fucking 70-inch TV downstairs whenever we need the time machine. But it's never really explained how they got the microwave to work in the first place. So I think they just kind of found a microwave that sends shit back in time in a dumpster somewhere.
I think there's some explanation for the microwave.
There has to be. It's too convenient. Isn't Daru supposed
to be some kind of super hacker or some shit?
Yeah, but I assume that means... being a super hacker has nothing to do with being able to build a microwave that sends shit back in time.
Well,
okay?
Don't they say that they pulled the microwave out of someone's trash at some point in the series?
Yeah, so what if the true mad scientist is out there in Tokyo and he was tinkering with his microwave and it's like, shit, I'm just gonna throw it out. It's not sending the bananas back in time the way I envisioned it, right? And then they stumble across this time machine. Or maybe we just don't know what we're talking about and there's an actual explanation for this shit.
I was under the impression that Daru just modified the time machine somehow into their Future Lab Gadget 001, whatever the hell it is.
Maybe. And apparently, the actual time machine operates on the same principle, so if you think about it, it's a giant microwave.
Is it?
Well, they've still got the lifter. They've talked about that before, like, or at least maybe not this time machine, but like the time machine that Suzuha had before, where she could only go back in time.
Isn't this the current one?
No, okay, the current one can go backwards and forwards, because I'm sure Okabe lived through the events of seeing Suzuha, like, forget her life's purpose and not be able to travel back and all of that, right? And I was like, it would be a good idea to make sure the time machine can go backwards and forwards, right?
Okay, this leads me to another question I have about the time machine.
Okay.
She can make camouflage it.
Okay.
It's established earlier in the series that she's able to camouflage the time machine and hide it from people.
Sure.
So why does she just camouflage the time machine when the CIA shows up?
Because they know it's there.
It-
Or, like, maybe she needs to get to the control panel to camouflage it. Because they just kind of sprung up on her.
My
right?
question is, so for the entirety of the show, it's presumably camouflaged.
Okay.
So how exactly does this Russian attack helicopter know exactly where to launch its missiles? Is it not camouflage at that point?
It wasn't camouflage when the missiles were launched. People could see that shit. But, okay, so Mr. Insane actual mad scientist knows because he has insider information from the future where it's
About
going to
the
be.
time machine. Okay.
Right? And then he shows up, and there's the gunfight, and then they want to get to it. Like, maybe they can't cloak and travel through time at the same time.
Okay, maybe.
So, whatever. That's just something the writers didn't address.
And another
I think it's
thing
plausible.
about the mad scientist, why doesn't he just shoot all of them? Right? He very easily could have just shot Okabe on the stairwell, and then just shot Suzuha and shot Mayuri, and hopped in the time machine and just waltzed off.
Okay,
but he
but
just doesn't.
I think the explanation is that there's the deterministic way of how things are supposed to play out in a world line, right?
Okay.
And Luskin and, or
But if he
whatever his
just
name,
leaves the world line, why does he give a shit?
if he leaves the world line, he doesn't keep his memories, so he's not gonna, like, if he changes the world line, he's not gonna know how it was changed,
Okay.
right? So I'm guessing that he wants to maintain his current memories, because according to John Locke, that's who you are, and he kind of wants to come out on top in the situation, right? Which is why he was trying to do the whole thing where he was trying to deceive the world by making them think the time machine was destroyed while actually taking it. So he's trying to preserve the order of events, probably so that Kaguri still gets sent back to him. Because if he changes the world line too much, that might not happen, right?
Okay, but if he steals the time machine,
Yeah.
wouldn't he disappear from this world? Presumably,
I don't
he
know.
would take
Maybe-
the time machine and travel in time with it.
I'm thinking that, okay, what if he was in the act of getting to the time machine and then he kills, like, Okabe, right?
Yeah.
And then the time machine is never fucking made because Okabe's dead. Okay? Then the world line was changed before he gets into the time machine. So after he gets into the time machine, it probably doesn't matter a lot to him, but he needs to at least stay in the world line where the time machine makes it back through the chain of events such that is there at that time, right?
I think this is why people should just stay away from time travel stories. This is a fucking disaster.
Yeah, they're not. It's hard to do them well because nobody knows how time travel
Nobody
works.
knows the mechanics.
There's not a doctorate for time travel you can get at your local university. Oh, should we talk about our educational venture?
Oh yeah, so we have created an official website for Victor Chandra University. You can go out and get yourself a degree from Victor Chandra University. We cannot promise it's accredited in any way, but you probably can get a degree from us.
That's not accredited. Show it to all your friends. Give
it's
us all your money.
It's like those things where you can go online and you can become a minister of a fake online church.
Or
It's
like
the same concept.
a Duke of Sealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna have to code that, aren't I? Yeah, okay. That's fine. I know how to do it. But like, oh yeah, and an alternate thing. So right now we've got the domain for victorcondria.org, and that's redirecting to Columbia because, believe it or not, Victor Condria is based on an actual educational institution, and that's Columbia University of New York. But eventually we're going to be editing the website. I've already tried to host under the subdomain amadeus.victorcondria.org the open source project that's trying to create an Amadeus app with speech recognition capabilities. So go check that out if you have time. I guess we're going to also host our accredited institution under this domain eventually. So you guys should come check that out when it's up.
If and when.
If and when.
We'll probably also host the podcast on there.
Yeah, under like podcast.amadeus. Oh, thanks for listening in, guys. That's our thoughts on Steins Gate
0.
Steins Gate episode 8.
If you made it this far into this cesspool of degeneracy, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Alright, see you guys next time, hopefully.